All right, I'm gonna go just the opposite. You try shot for me?
Do a lot of cheap plywood.
You know, it's a fucking bird. Yeah.
At times, I see all these things, there'll be questions and answers. Those four questions, which will elicit a lot of answers. Right after that, somebody from the audience will say, what can we do to stop the town, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'll give 500.
I'll give 2,500.
I pledge $50.
Are these dummy things or?
I was gonna give the
No,
first
only ones who are ready to go, fellas.
Can I make one suggestion? We're
Sure.
gonna be having
What is that?
an interruption in 1 second with the chairs. So maybe, rather
What
than
more?
do
What
what we
chairs?
do. Well, there might be more people coming too. Nancy's bringing 4 chairs over.
All right, tell you what.
Good evening and thank you for coming. I'd like to introduce the people who will be speaking this evening. On my right is State Assemblyman Louis Avoli. On my left is Marlene Mendelson, Treasurer of Rage. And on her left is Shirley Levine, Coffee Chairperson. If you live or work on Long Island, you are faced with a health emergency. The purpose of our meeting tonight is to acquaint you with what the issues are and to advise you as to what you can do to help. The town of Oyster Bay's landfill in Old Bethpage has been rated and designated as the #1 most toxic, hazardous landfill in all of New York State. In addition to that, it is on the National Priority Superfund list. What that means is we have a very terrible problem in this area, and this particular home is located just a few moments from the landfill. The neighboring communities will also be affected because this landfill is directly located over aquifers, and the aquifers and the deep recharge area are our only source of water supply in all of Long Island. So what happens here will affect Bethpage, Farmingdale, Hicksville, Massapequa, Syosset, Woodbury, and the system continues throughout. All of our water comes from underground. We have no other source. The purpose of this meeting, one of which will be to state very emphatically that if the water becomes polluted to a point beyond repairing it, then it can no longer be drinkable. We can't drink it, we can't cook with it, we can't bathe with it. Long Island will not be the Long Island we all know it today, and will be a different lifestyle. The goals of RAGE are to close this landfill as soon as possible, to clean it up, and to have it monitored. In addition to that, we want to prevent the town of Oyster Bay's proposed building of a resource recovery facility at this site. Now, the resource recovery facility is nothing more than a large incinerator. It does not belong on an environmentally fragile site. RAGE, which is the organization which I am co-president, consists of individuals who are deeply concerned about the environment, and specifically about the dangers that are currently at the Old Bethpage landfill, and if allowed to continue the way it is, what will even be more so than it is today. It will be further contaminated. We currently have thousands of members throughout all of Long Island, and our base of support is widespread. We have the support of houses of worship, civic associations, the school board, different landfill groups, organizations, a hospital, doctors, and it goes on and on. With the passing of each day, we get more members as more people become aware of the true facts. Now, it may be hard to believe, it was for me, but I've learned that when I grew up, I was brought up to understand that officials, politicians, one of their primary goals was to safeguard and protect our health. Unfortunately, the politicians and the officials in Nassau County, with the exception of State Assemblyman Lou Yavoli, have been remiss in this area. And we're now 2 years old as an organization, and it's been rather a rotten thing to say, but if we don't stand together and protect ourselves, we're going to have some very, very terrible consequences. The town of Oyster Bay has refused to meet with us. The town of Oyster Bay has spent so far over $5 million of our taxpayers' money to foist this monstrosity on us. We feel that we are not political scapegoats. We feel we're tax-paying, law-abiding citizens, and we have every right to survive as any other person in the United States with all of the dignity and the safeguards that are due us. Rage and the Plainview Water District has retained the prestigious law firm of Toomey, Latham and Shea. Now, these lawyers are specialists in environmental law. They were very, very hard to come by, and we are grateful that they took our cause to help us. They're expensive. However, they've given us what they call, quote-unquote, inside price to help us. But an inside price to people like us, who give hundreds and hundreds of dollars of their own, is hard to come by. When the town can bang a gavel and say $5 million, so be it, it's easy. So one of the reasons that we're here tonight, and I'm sure one of the other speakers will expand upon the theme, is to get money to further the cause. It's taken 2 years, but I'm delighted to tell you that we have a rather great victory. The Department of Environmental Conservation has denied the town of Oyster Bay's proposal or application for an expansion of the landfill by 13.5 acres. Now, it's almost as if this is David and Goliath, and we are little fellow with the slingshot. But we're going to win, going to continue winning, and this is just the beginning. We are pretty much up at the forefront of all of Long Island. They're looking at us. We did something that so far nobody has done. We beat the town. Just regular people, lawyers, doctors, engineers, teachers, right down the line. We all got together and we said, we've had enough. And we had. And we did it, and it's thrilling, and I'm glad to have been part of this thing, as all of you will be if you're not already joining with us. In Woburn, Massachusetts, just recently, just a few years back, it took the deaths of 17 children who died from leukemia to get the townspeople to suddenly stand up and get together. And the reason for these children's deaths is because of contaminated water from a landfill such as we have here. Now, we in Rage say nobody should have to die to prove a point. Love Canal, Hooker Chemical dumped thousands and thousands of toxic chemicals. Hooker Chemical dumped toxic chemicals in Old Bethpage. The similarity is frightening. I'm going to stop here because there are other speakers, but I would like to end by saying this. Give us your support. Join with Rage. Fight for what should be basic human rights. Safe air, clean water. Fight for your children. Fight for yourselves. Fight for senior citizens. Fight for children who are yet unborn. Fight for future generations. Keep the dignity, keep the pride, keep the safety of Long Island. We deserve it. We demand it. We're going to get it. Please help us. Help yourselves. Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce State Assemblyman Lou Yavoli. Lou has been, I would say, the only politician who has been courageous enough to stand up and be counted with us when we didn't know just what to do. We said we had a meeting, we called Lou, we said we got a problem, what do we do? And from that point on, he has helped us tremendously. He's helped put our organization together. He's helped guide us. Now, we'll also say this. We have asked for the help of other politicians, Republicans, Democrats. We have not gotten it. I must tell you, regardless as to whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, Lou has helped us tremendously, and it's with pleasure I introduce you.
Thank you very much, Lou. I would just like to expand for a moment upon what Lou began with, and that is everyone in this room should be absolutely clear on one particular point. This landfill has been designated the #1 hazardous toxic dump site in the entire state of New York, and it's one of the 100 worst such dump sites in the entire country. This is not a designation that I or Rage or anyone else gave to that site, but that was done by the United States Environmental Protection Agency in conjunction with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The town of Oyster Bay, unfortunately, never refers to it as the #1 hazardous toxic dump site, but that's exactly what it is. The thing that Lou spoke about earlier is that we're unique on Long Island. Unlike most other areas in the country, all of the water that we drink, that we bathe in, that we cook with, is derived from underground aquifers, which are streams that were left over from the glacier. There is an area on Long Island where those streams are naturally cleansed. It's known as the critical deep flow recharge area. That area generally runs along the spine or the center of Long Island to the extreme north shore. The Old Bethpage landfill is in the midst of the critical deep flow recharge area, which means all of the known contaminants that are in there, there's only one thing that can happen to them. They travel through the ground, they will ultimately permeate the aquifer. It means you will not be able to drink the water or do any of the other things that you do with water. That's why our concerns are so great. That's why we've waged this battle, and that's why, as Lou said, we were successful in winning one leg of the battle, and that is to stop the expansion of the landfill. Our town officials had an application before the State Department of Environmental Conservation to expand this #1 rated toxic dump site, another 13.5 acres. Knowing everything that they know about this site, those were their plans. The second part of their plan is to construct a resource recovery system at this very site. Now, I would tell you, quite frankly, I think if you look for any length of time, you could not come up with a worse site in terms of selection for either one of those projects. One thing you shouldn't do is expand a landfill that's already has a rating as a hazardous toxic dump site. And the second thing that you don't do is construct a resource recovery system over an aquifer that may become contaminated in the very near future. And understand, we've had conversations with at least a dozen hydrologists. They have all come to the same conclusion. They do not disagree on the point that I'm about to make. Unless the landfill is closed, capped, and cleaned of the chemicals that we know are in there, what will happen is that they will enter the aquifer, and that aquifer supplies 88% of Nassau County with its potable water. So when attempts are made to portray this as just one community that doesn't want it in its backyard, nothing could be further from the truth. Everyone in Nassau County has a stake in the outcome of this landfill. Not just the residents of Plainview, Old Bethpage, but every other community within the county will be ultimately affected by what is being generated on a daily basis at that landfill, and that's why this is a critical battle. Hydrologists say one thing: it will ultimately enter the aquifer. The only thing they disagree on is the amount of time that that will take. We had one hydrologist who told us within a period of 5 years, if that landfill isn't cleaned up, the first leg of contamination will be in the aquifer. Others say 50 years. But again, if you had them in this room tonight and you asked them if nothing at all is done, if the town is allowed to continue its plans to expand the landfill, put the resource recovery plant there, what will happen to that aquifer? And they in unison would tell you that the aquifer would ultimately become contaminated. I'm not going to play a numbers game with the public's health and safety. It's fairly obvious to anyone who knows anything about this site that it must be closed, that it must be capped, and it must be cleaned up. And the unfortunate thing is that we have to hold coffee clutches like this, and you know, we're very happy that you're all here. But the point is, we have to take the time to do this and describe to you why such an illogical plan should not be going forward. And that's the unfortunate part of it, because our local elected officials know what we know. They've talked to the same people that we've talked to. They know what the final outcome will be if they do not take the proper action, and yet they insist on pursuing these plans. I'm going to just give you one moment, because the The Water District Commissioners are not here this evening. They couldn't make this meeting, but they have been actively involved in this battle. And Lou pointed out earlier, this is not a partisan situation. This is not a particular political party opposing another political party, because the makeup of the various groups that are opposed to the town's plans at this site are comprised of, all different degrees of political parties. The Water District Commissioners are concerned over the following. They say if you construct the resource recovery plant that the town intends to construct at this site, you will ultimately contaminate the aquifer. Why do they say that? Because the plant the town is talking about will draw between 1.4 and 1.6 million gallons of water on a daily basis. The Water District says, A, we cannot supply that quantity of water. B, if we did, you would create what engineers know, and we've discussed this with engineers, you create a down or a backdraft that forms a vacuum. That in turn pulls all of the chemicals that are already into the landfill through the ground a lot faster than they would normally travel, which means you would speed up the flow of contamination that's already exists in the landfill. And that's what their basic objections are. That's why they've joined in this lawsuit with rage. That's why the Water District has appropriated funds to pursue the legal action that we're forced to pursue. So again, it's not just a little local community comprised of, a half dozen people who don't want it in their backyard. Nothing could be further from the truth. The school board has taken a position adamantly opposed to the town's plans. And again, their concerns are with the children who have to breathe the air and drink the water. I can assure you, we are not alarmists, we are not crazy, we know what we're talking about, and we know what has to be done here. The ironic part of this is that we have to battle our local officials to get accomplished what they should be trying to accomplish on their own, without meetings like this, without the community going out and seeking to raise funds from individuals. Lou said it before. The town has spent almost $6 million in consulting fees. To do what? To prove that this is the proper site to expand the landfill and construct the resource recovery plant. And that's our money that's being spent. The town officials are not sticking their hand in their own pocket and taking out $6 million. It's our taxes that they've collected that they're using to hire the consultants to convince everyone that this is the proper site. Now, it would seem to me that simple logic would dictate, if you have the #1 hazardous toxic dump site in the entire state of New York, and one of the most toxic dump sites in the entire country, the thing that you would be seeking to do would be to clean it up as quickly as possible. Not expand it and not construct a resource recovery plant there. And that's what the battle is all about. We've won the first leg. The town has been denied the right to expand the landfill another 13.5 acres, although about 10 days ago, after saying they would not appeal the state's decision on the expansion, they did a complete reversal, and now the town of Oyster Bay is appealing the state's decision, which denied them the right to expand the landfill 13.5 acres. Again, it seems as if the battle is starting all over again. I can only assure you of one thing: we're not going to get tired, we're not going to give up. We're going to raise whatever monies have to be raised to fight them, not on an equal footing. It is David and Goliath. I think the total cost in the last lawsuit came to $80,000 that was raised within the community by Rage, portion of which was contributed by the Plainview-Obeth-Page Water District, and the town spent $5.5 million. And in the final analysis, we were proven right and they were proven wrong. So we're not giving up. Not at all. We can't afford to give up because, as I said earlier, it goes far beyond this community. This decision that occurs at this landfill and the action that takes place there will ultimately touch the life of almost every Nassau County resident. That's why it's a critical battle. That's why it's one we can't afford to lose, and it's one that we will not lose.
Our next speaker will be Marlene Mendelson.
I like to think of the RAGE organization as the Paul Revere of our time. We are alerting you all, not just our community, but other communities, to an imminent danger. The danger is not the British, and it's not just here, but the danger is life-threatening chemical poisoning, and it will affect not just Old Bethpage, but almost all of Nassau County. The reason for this danger, the source of the danger, is that hellhole called the Old Bethpage landfill. That landfill is designated the #1 most hazardous toxic waste site in all of New York State. Now, as the gentlemen have just told you, the plume of contamination, which emanates from a toxic waste site, is underneath that toxic landfill. The plume of contamination is 160 feet thick, and it goes down 265 feet. Lou, where do we get our water from? Drinking water, about 500 and
Right.
something. So the water is going down and it's leaching down. Now, when we think of the toxic waste site, we have to realize it's not just going to contaminate our water, because hazardous chemicals emanate from a landfill, a toxic landfill. So don't forget, our water is going to be in peril, our air is going to be polluted, and not only that, but we have incinerators that have been pumping 12 years in violation of the Federal Clean Air Act standards. So we've got our water in danger, our air in danger, and we've got our air doubly in danger because of those incinerators pumping away. And we've got to do something about it. When we think of a landfill, we cannot put our Old Bethpage landfill in that category. We are a toxic waste site. Now, a toxic waste site is what we have, and this is what was had in Love Canal. Love Canal was a toxic site. We're a toxic site. Hooker Chemical Corporation dumped in Love Canal, and Hooker Chemical Corporation dumped in Old Bethpage. The similarities between Love Canal and us are mind-boggling. Lois Gibbs, the organizer of the Love Canal people, came to one of our rallies, and she said, you're lucky, because you know the link between toxic, hazardous chemical substances that were dumped in your landfill. But we didn't know why our children were dying and getting and sickening and really dying. But you know you have a chance. But if nobody's listening to us, we have to take matters into our own hand. Nobody is listening to us. Must the babies die? Must we bring our babies to town hall and then say, look, this is what's happening? Woburn, Massachusetts is another example. They don't listen until it's too late, and you've got to listen. It's happening to us. We have this facade of normalcy going on in this area and in the communities that surround us. We're all going back to school now. The children are doing normal things. In the summer, we were planting in the trees and the shrubs and picnics and all that. Now it's fall, and we're going to get ready for fall. It's all nonsense. We're not a normal community, and the communities surrounding us will not be normal for long. We're abnormal. There are unseen deadly chemicals in our air. There's surely that plume of contamination leaching its way into our water supply, and we've got to do something. Love Canal was a horror, devastation. You all remember Love Canal. Do you want it to happen here? Tumors the size of grapefruits the women had. Babies. Horrible. I won't even go into that. Babies born with 3 sets of teeth, 3 eyes, 4 ears. Horrors. Not because it runs in their family or it's a normal thing to have happen concerning the town, is what the town plans for us. They plan to enlarge by 13.5 acres the #1 most toxic waste site in all of New York State. That is madness. But we beat them on that. We beat them. You say you can't expand the #1 toxic waste site. Well, now the second plan the town has for us is to construct a resource recovery. It resources nothing and it recovers nothing. It's just an incinerator. Well, we don't need an incinerator. We've been contaminated for a long time. And anyone in any community can understand we have borne a garbage problem burden. We have. But this is too much. We cannot endure a resource recovery here. So what we have to do, oh, and there's one more problem I forgot. Government agencies who are supposed to help us are inept, ineffectual, and underfunded. So we've got the real problem of the toxics in our area, and you have to face that because they're here. Then we've got the town government, which is not going to help us. And then we've got government agencies who are supposed to help us, and they won't. Well, what are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do what people have always done since time began, when they were faced with governments that were indifferent, selfish, and profit-motivated. You stand together, you unite, and you fight. And that's what we have to do. Now, the fight that concerns us means that we have to get legal and technical help. Because grassrootsy as we are, and we have a lot of spirit in the community, you still need technical help and you still need legal help. Because you need experts to fight experts. And that's okay. We had the great environmental law firm of Twomey, Latham & Shea helping us fight the expansion, and we won. Now they're going to help us fight this resource recovery. And what we have to do here is realize that if we ask of you $100 a family, that's the guideline. If everyone in our area gave $100, we wouldn't have a problem. So it's not a very large amount of money. You can budget it over a period of time, but think of it, it's an investment against your life. Think of Love Canal, and it can happen here. Think of Woburn, Massachusetts, with those 17 dead children. Then they decided to do something. I've been at town hall meetings where they shut the buzzer off on the people that stood up to complain. They don't care. They shut the buzzer off on our assemblyman. He just shut the mic off. They don't care. You've got to understand. I come from a generation where, as Lou said, I think we're the same age, we just accepted. You didn't protest and you didn't buck anything. Well, that was wrong. Maybe we learned from the younger people. You have to doubt when your life is in somebody else's hands. You must ask questions and you have to think for yourself. And that's what it's all about. The government and government agencies are responsible for our health, safety, and welfare. But they will not do it unless you make them do what they are supposed to do. Now, we are good people. We pay our taxes. We obey the laws. We do what we're supposed to do. They are supposed to do the same, but they won't unless we put pressure on it. So this is what I suggest. I suggest tonight you realize that we all have to unite, put it together, and get a lot of money together so that we can fight City Hall and win once more. Thank you.
I'm going to throw open the floor to questions, please.
Yeah, I have one. Mr. Golis, someone, you mentioned that there was a, Mr. Mendelson, you mentioned there was a, the toxins have reached a depth of 200 and some odd feet,
Yes,
and
260.
the toxins are 160 feet deep or thick. My question is simply this: is the water safe at this time to drink? Can we drink the water now?
Lou, you want to take that, Lou?
Okay, maybe we can share the question.
Okay.
Yeah, the Water District informs us that they test our water periodically, and that at the present time it certainly is safe to drink. On the other hand, what I said earlier is something that you have to, keep in the back of your mind. We're not so sure that we'll be able to sit here in 2 or 3 or 4 years and be able to make that statement, because the contamination has reached a depth of 265 feet. It's 160 feet thick. The wells that we draw the water from are about 500 feet deep. Part of the problem that the Water District has with the town's plans, one, the expansion, which they feel will only have a negative impact on that which already exists, the contamination that's in there. 2, is the construction of the resource recovery plant, which will further compound the problem by speeding the flow of those contaminants through the ground faster than they would normally travel. So that's the Water District's basic objections to both those projects, the expansion and the resource recovery plant. But I would tell you that from all that we know, today the water is safe to drink according to the Water District.
I live very close to the landfill. Is my family in more danger than somebody living further away from the landfill?
Well, again, the answer is yes and no, and I don't mean to hedge the question. As we pointed out, in terms of water contamination, the ultimate contamination that would occur if the conditions at that landfill are not corrected will affect all of Nassau County. It depends on the particular flow. Right now, that plume of contamination that we just described is traveling to the south and somewhat to the east. You would be to the north of the landfill. So you might not bear the first brunt of the water contamination, but other communities, not Old Bethpage, would bear that brunt first. Naturally, in terms of air quality, any system, the most sophisticated system known to mankind today, they call it resource recovery. It is truly an incinerator. That's what it is. They have various devices to clean the air. There is no incinerator or resource recovery system that's online in this country, in Europe, or on any other planet for that matter, that does not generate dioxin. The only way you eliminate the dioxin is if you don't burn the plastics and the paper at the same time. plans that the town has for this resource recovery system call for the burning of the paper and the plastics at the same time. The jury is truly out on resource recovery systems. There is grave controversy that rages all of the time as to what are acceptable levels of dioxin, but don't be deluded. There isn't an incinerator or resource recovery plant online in this country that is not generating some amount of dioxin. The question is, what is a safe level? So living in this community, whether it's the incinerators that burn today that, as Marlene pointed out, are in violation of existing EPA standards, or what would be referred to as a modern resource recovery system, it's going to give off some amount of pollution which will directly affect the community where it's located, and that would be us. So I hope I've answered the question properly.
I think I have something else to say. I think this is correct that that's what we're trying to impress other communities, that they are just in much danger as those that are clustered near, because something about when the plume of contamination from the stacks go out, they may not go down, but they'll go over. So that actually you might get more contamination if you're in a surrounding area instead of a immediate. So either way, you're going to get.
Yeah, what you really have to look for is the most acceptable site, not the least acceptable site. The best place you can locate these things, one, you would not locate one over an aquifer in the critical deep flow recharge area. I think that is just absolutely ludicrous. Secondly, you don't put it in the midst of a residential community. You attempt to find an isolated area that's not in the critical deep flow recharge area, knowing what we know about these systems. You've got to pick a site that'll have the least negative impact on the most people. That criteria is not obviously being used in terms of the town's plans.
So much is said against resource recovery. What are we going to do with the garbage that's around?
Is that for me?
Anybody?
Okay.
Anybody want to take that?
Well, you know, as I said, hopefully technology will improve to a point where there will be plants that will not generate dioxins, that won't generate various forms of pollution. But I have to be candid with you. Those plants do not exist today, contrary to what all the manufacturers say and things that you read in the newspaper. The question is, what are acceptable levels if there is such a standard? And what you really have to do was the second part of the answer to the last question. If you're going to you have to get rid of your garbage. There's no question about it. There are numerous things I don't want to go into a lengthy dissertation as to what the town of Oyster Bay does not do, but one of the things that they don't do, they don't mandate source separation. They don't mandate recycling. They still accept all of the solids, the so-called non-putrescibles in this landfill, the concrete, the tree stumps, the grass clippings. You can eliminate those from your waste stream. You reduce the amount that you have to burn on a daily basis. Those are basic steps that have to be taken. We've asked that they establish a site selection committee, hopefully to come up with the kind of a site that I just spoke about, one that's not over the aquifer, in the critical deep flow recharge area, not near residents. And don't buy the baloney that they constantly give out that there are no such sites. This is an expansive area of many vacant parcels throughout our township and certainly within neighboring areas as well. They haven't bothered to look. That's what's terribly frustrating, and that's what's upsetting. You don't take the worst toxic dump site and plan your expansion there and your resource recovery plant there. One thing we know, and I'm not begging the question, is that you cannot do it at this site. Now you have to take the next logical step. Look for other sites and try to get a system that's going to be as foolproof as possible based on today's technology. I might also tell you that one of the things that is greatly disturbing to all of us is that the company that the town has selected to build this plant, which is regarded as the eighth wonder of the world, is a company that's never built the plant before at a cost of $225 million, which, when the amortization on the bond issue is accrued over a 25-year period, it's going to cost the taxpayers $700 million. So it may be, while no one likes to think of this as an alternative, it may be that trucking the garbage out is a cheaper alternative. May very well be that that is cheaper and certainly more environmentally sound. Trucking it out of the township completely.
Any other questions?
No, not a question, but a statement. As you know, I'm a member of the board of the Plainville-Bethpage School Board, and I can speak on their behalf because we have gone on record several times opposed to the expansion of this landfill, supporting its closing, primarily because, in our case, because we're responsible for the health of our children, of its close proximity to an elementary school. But we have been on record, we have written many letters to the town officials on many occasions, supporting the efforts of RAISE to close it, and I can assure you that the school board will continue to do that.
For those of you that are not familiar with the gentleman that just spoke, it's Mario Calalori, who is a member of the Plainview Old Bethpage Board of Education, and who has been most supportive in our efforts to have the expansion denied and to have a ruling against the construction of the resource recovery. And I know, I don't presume to speak for RAGE, but I know as an official and as a resident of the area, I'm quite pleased by the board's action, and particularly yours, Mario. You've been a tremendous help, and I appreciate that.
Marlene, what can we do to stop the town and to protect our air, the water, and our general health from?
Well, I think the answer is, did you want Shirley?
Do you want to, should I take it at that point? Okay. We have already raised approximately $80,000 in our effort, and we were successful in defeating the first leg of the town's, the plan that the town had to expand the landfill. We estimate that we will need another $100,000 to defeat the second plan that they have to build the resource recovery. Now, what can you do to help? One of the things that you can do, the first thing, is to write your check tonight to the RAGE Legal Fund. If you do not have your check with you, we can give you a pledge card which we've printed up. You may choose to pay in installments if you don't have your check tonight. We would like you to fill it right out and give it back to us. The lawyers will continue to work for us as long as we have your pledge card. The second thing that you can do tonight is to volunteer your time. We need you to type, if that's what you're good at. We need you to stuff envelopes, to stand in front of supermarkets and hand out flyers. We need you to do whatever it is that you do best. As our organization grows, we need more and more people to help. And the third thing that you can do is to volunteer your home, as the Levy's have tonight, to have a coffee such as this, to invite your neighbors and your friends in. We can help you plan it. You can ask Golda Levy that it isn't that much of a trouble, and we will help you to execute as good a meeting as we've had tonight. We do appreciate your efforts on our behalf as well as your own. But please do remember, don't leave tonight without doing these three things. That is, writing your check to the RAGE Legal Fund, volunteering your time, and thirdly, to volunteer your home to have a coffee such as this. It's the best insurance policy that you will ever buy. And I know that in helping us, you will be truly helping yourself.
Well, I wanted to say something else. We're asking for the guidelines were $100 per family. But if you can give more, we gladly take $300 and $500. And I'm not being facetious. Some of you have businesses. Then let your business give $500. And if your business can serve a function for RAGE, if you're a printer, let us know. But give really big bucks if you can, because this is a big operation. We're really asking for a lot of money, because that will do the trick, and we can win again.
Okay, please make out your checks to the RAGE Legal Fund. If you need a pledge card and a self-addressed envelope, or you can give it right back to us tonight. Is there someone who needs a pledge card? Okay.
I'd like to add that we would appreciate your spreading the word to your neighbors, your friends. Talk it up. It's very, very important.
I'll take checks. RAGE Legal.
Yes.
Well, Lou, in anticipation of the annual budget hearings on Oyster Bay, I think it's important that as many people as can come to those hearings come. Because the problem that we've faced in the past, and the reason why you're facing this kind of a problem with the landfill, we faced it in the budget areas, is that when they have these public hearings, no citizens go to the hearings, so the politicians don't believe we're for real and they don't believe we're out there. In October, for the last third week in October, we have the annual public hearings on the Town of Oyster Bay budget. It's extremely important this year because of the question of the $20 million in a garbage cost to ship the garbage out of town, and also the fact that Lou has charged that they're carrying these tremendous surpluses. So the people that are here, I would encourage them to encourage their friends to come down. They have an evening meeting that starts at 8 o'clock. And if we can get 400 or 500 people to that meeting, I'm telling you, you'll blow them right out of their chairs this year.
What is the date of this meeting?
They haven't said it, they haven't said it.
Could you call me, Mario, and I'll inform the
For the
rest of the.
specifics.
You let me know when you know, and I'll pass the word around, and maybe we can get some people to go. I think that's great.
Thank you very much for your response. We appreciate your coming here this evening. This is just further battle that we're in. We all stand to gain. Spread the word. Appreciate your coming. Have a very nice evening.
Thank you.